The Grand Hall of Nexus Prime blazed with light from 1,000 civilizations. Massive crystal chandeliers hung beneath a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. Holographic stars drifted through the air, recreating famous constellations from across the galaxy. Music echoed softly between towering pillars of silver and gold. It was the largest diplomatic gathering in known space. And humanity was still the newest guest. Captain Taeyang Kim stood near the entrance, observing the endless sea of alien delegates moving through the hall. To his right, a species covered in shimmering emerald scales glided gracefully through the crowd. To his left, beings made entirely of living energy floated above the floor like drifting ghosts. Some diplomats looked almost human. Almost. But their eyes always gave them away. Ancient eyes. Eyes that had witnessed empires rise and collapse long before humanity had invented its first telescope. Taeyang adjusted the collar of his formal uniform. The navy blue fabric felt uncomfortable after months aboard a starship. On a ship, uniforms were practical. Here, everything was politics. Even clothing. Beside him stood Lieutenant Giwon Park. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes never stopped moving. She watched exits, security stations, crowd movements, potential threats. Old habits were difficult to break, especially for someone who had survived 3 combat deployments. Too many politicians in one room, Giwon muttered. Her hand rested casually near her side. It makes me nervous. Taeyang chuckled. That's because you're convinced every diplomat secretly wants to kill someone. Most of them do. Before he could answer, another voice joined the conversation. That's an unfair stereotype. Dr. Hyan Lee approached carrying a datapad overflowing with research notes. The xenobiologist looked as though she had not slept properly in days, which probably meant she had discovered something interesting, or forgotten to sleep again. Possibly both. The purpose of diplomacy, she continued, is to prevent people from killing each other. Jiwon raised an eyebrow. And how's that working out for the galaxy? Hyan considered the question. Historically? She glanced around the hall. Not particularly well. The 3 humans laughed quietly. Moments like this reminded Taeyang how far humanity had come. Only 3 years earlier, humans had been outsiders looking up at the stars. Now they stood among the greatest civilizations in existence. 3 years of negotiations. 3 years of scrutiny. 3 years of constantly proving they deserved to be here. Every achievement had been questioned. Every mistake magnified. Many species still viewed humans as curious newcomers, temporary participants in a game far older than they understood. But humanity endured. Humanity always endured. Hyan suddenly became serious. The Valerian delegation just arrived. Taeyang noticed the change in her tone immediately. What about them? Instead of answering, she pointed toward the center of the hall. See for yourself. Taeyang followed her gaze, and instantly understood. The crowd itself seemed to part around them. The Valarians moved through the hall with effortless confidence. Tall. Elegant. Beautiful in an almost unnatural way. Their silver-white skin reflected the surrounding lights like polished marble. Long ceremonial robes flowed behind them. Every movement looked calculated. Perfect. The leader of the delegation walked at the center. Ambassador Sereth, one of the most influential political figures in the Galactic Council. A diplomat whose words had started wars and ended them. Around him, dozens of alien representatives eagerly sought conversation. Some bowed their heads respectfully. Others waited patiently for a chance to speak. Influence radiated from him like gravity. Giwon folded her arms. They certainly enjoy attention. They earned it, Hyan replied. The Valarians helped create the modern council nearly 4,000 years ago, which means they've had 4,000 years to become arrogant. Taeyang smiled faintly. Careful, someone might hear you. They already know. A quiet voice spoke from behind them. The 3 humans turned. Standing there was a Valerian woman, tall, graceful, silver eyes filled with amusement. She had approached so quietly that none of them had noticed. Even Giwon looked surprised. The Valarian smiled. And for the record, Lieutenant. Her eyes sparkled. We are absolutely arrogant. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Taeyang laughed. A genuine laugh. The Valerian joined him. Around them, the music continued. Diplomats continued talking. Deals continued being made. Everything appeared peaceful, normal. But Taeyang suddenly felt a strange sensation, a feeling he had learned never to ignore. The feeling that history was about to change. He looked around the magnificent hall, at the smiling diplomats, at the endless lights, at the civilizations celebrating their unity. And for reasons he could not explain, he wondered how many of them would still be smiling by the end of the night. A group of tall, elegant beings moved through the crowd. They seemed to glow with a soft inner light. Their skin was pale silver, and their eyes were deep purple. Other aliens moved aside to let them pass, showing respect, or perhaps fear. At the center of the group walked a woman who commanded attention without effort. She wore robes that flowed like liquid starlight. Her posture was perfect, her expression calm and distant. This was Ambassador Nari, representative of the Vitheran Empire. The Vitharians vote on our petition tomorrow, Jujuan said. Their support could change everything. Taeyang nodded. Humanity wanted full voting rights in the council. Currently, they could speak but not vote on major decisions. Many older species thought humans were too young, too aggressive, too emotional to have real power. The Vitheran vote would influence others. A chime rang through the hall. The crowd settled. A council official began welcoming speeches. Taeyang barely listened. He watched Nari instead. She stood like a statue, seemingly bored by the whole event, but sometimes her eyes moved, observing everything with hidden intensity. After the speeches ended, the formal part of the reception began. Diplomats mingled, making small talk and secret deals. Taeyang moved through the crowd, shaking hands and tentacles and energy fields. He smiled until his face hurt. Then Nari appeared before him. Up close, she was even more striking. She stood slightly taller than him, and her purple eyes seemed to look through him rather than at him. "Captain Kim," she said. Her voice was melodic but cold. "I have observed your species with interest." "Thank you, Ambassador," Taeyang replied carefully. "We hope to earn your confidence. Confidence must be earned through proper behavior." She paused, and the nearby conversations quieted. Other aliens sensed something happening. "Your people show promise despite your youth. You have adequate competence." Taeyang felt the insult hidden in the compliment, but kept his expression neutral. Nari continued, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent hall. "As a gesture of goodwill between our peoples, I grant you a privilege. You may select any female from the lesser species present as your companion. This is a great honor in Vitheran culture." The hall became absolutely quiet. Taeyang understood immediately what was happening. This was a test and a trap. The Vitharians saw themselves as superior to all other species. By offering him a choice of lesser species, Nari was forcing him to either accept their hierarchy or insult them by refusing. He saw Jiwan tense nearby, ready to intervene. Hun watched with wide eyes. Dozens of aliens waited to see how the human would respond. Some looked amused, others looked curious, a few looked sympathetic. Taeyang looked at Nari, really looked at her. Past the imperial demeanor and the cold expression, he saw the loneliness there hidden deep. He saw someone who had been powerful for so long that she had forgotten what it meant to be simply a person. He saw someone who needed to be challenged, not obeyed. He met her eyes directly and spoke clearly, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "I want you, Ambassador." For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Nari's carefully controlled expression cracked. Surprise flashed across her face, followed by something else. Something she quickly hid, but not before Taeyang saw it. Interest. Real, genuine interest. The hall erupted in whispers and gasps. Some aliens looked shocked. Others looked delighted at the scandal. The Varian delegates surrounding Nari stiffened in outrage, but Taeyang kept his eyes on Nari, and she kept her eyes on him. In that moment, something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition that neither of them was what others expected. "You dare?" one of the Vitheran aides hissed. Nari raised one hand slightly, silencing her aide. She continued to study Taeyang with those ancient purple eyes. Finally she spoke, and her voice was different now, less cold, more curious. Interesting, she said softly. Very interesting indeed. She turned and walked away, her delegation following in confused chaos. But before she disappeared into the crowd, she glanced back once, just once, and Taeyang knew that everything had changed. Jiwon appeared at his side. Sir, what just happened? Taeyang watched Nari disappear. I think, he said slowly, I just made things very complicated. Or, Hien added quietly, you just changed galactic politics forever. The reception continued. But everyone was talking about the human captain who dared to challenge the Vitheran ambassador. Some called him brave, others called him foolish, but everyone agreed on one thing. Tomorrow's vote would be far more interesting than anyone had expected. The message arrived at dawn, a formal request from Ambassador Nari for a private meeting. Taeyang read it 3 times, looking for hidden threats or tricks. The language was perfectly polite, which somehow made it more concerning. It could be a trap, Jian said. She stood by the window of their quarters, watching the station's artificial sunrise. The Vitharians are known for holding grudges. It could also be an opportunity, Hun countered. She sat surrounded by data screens showing Vowendran cultural information. Their society values strength and boldness. What you did last night was both. Taeyang made his decision. I will meet her alone as she requested. Sir, I must advise against that, Juan started. Noted, Taeyang said with a slight smile. But if we want to change how the galaxy sees us, we cannot act from fear. 3 hours later, he stood outside the Vaediran diplomatic suite. The door was made of some material that seemed to shift colors in the light. He pressed the entry chime and waited. The door opened. A young Vetheran male stood there, his expression carefully neutral. Captain Kim, the ambassador is expecting you. I am Minho, her aide. Taeyang followed Minho through rooms decorated in minimalist elegance. Everything was precise, ordered, beautiful, but cold. Finally, they reached a private study where Nari waited. She stood by a large window overlooking the station. Without her formal robes, wearing simpler clothing, she looked less like an imperial statue and more like a person, but when she turned to face him, her expression was stern. Leave us, she told Minho. The aide hesitated, then bowed and left. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Nari studied Taeyang in silence. He stood still, meeting her gaze without challenge or submission. Finally she spoke. Explain yourself, human. What was your purpose last night? Was it mockery, defiance, some primitive mating ritual? None of those, Taeyang replied calmly. It was honesty. Honesty? She said the word like it was foreign. You honestly wanted me as a companion. You, a human, wanted me a Vitheran ambassador? No, Taeyang said, and saw her eyes flash. I do not want you as a companion. That word implies ownership. I want to know you as an equal, as a person, not a position. For a long moment, Nari said nothing. Then something unexpected happened. She laughed. It was a short surprise sound, as if she had forgotten how. An equal, she repeated. Do you understand how absurd that sounds? My people have traveled the stars for 10,000 years. Your species barely left your planet 3 centuries ago. Age does not determine worth, Taeyang said. A child can teach an elder. A new perspective can illuminate old truths. Your empire has strength and wisdom, but perhaps it has forgotten something along the way. And what is that? Her tone was sharp, but curious. Connection. Real connection between individuals, not just hierarchies and protocols. Your culture values strength, and that is admirable. But humans have learned that true strength includes the courage to be vulnerable. The courage to admit when we need someone not beneath us, but beside us. Nari turned back to the window. Her reflection in the glass looked troubled. You speak of things my people consider weaknesses, emotions, dependencies. We evolved beyond such limitations, millennia ago. Did you evolve beyond them? Taeyang asked quietly. Or did you simply bury them? She went very still. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. You are either very brave or very foolish to speak to me this way. Perhaps both, he admitted. But I meant what I said last night. I saw you standing there, perfect and powerful and completely alone. And I recognize that loneliness, because I carry it too. Leadership is isolating. Representing an entire species is exhausting. We wear masks until we forget our real faces. Nari turned to face him again. This time the coldness in her expression had cracked. "How did you know? How did you see that?" "Because I feel it every day," Taeyong said simply. "Every decision I make affects how the galaxy views all humans. Every word I speak is judged and analyzed. I wanted you to know that someone understands that burden, that you do not have to carry it alone." Something shifted in the room. The tension transformed from confrontation to something else. Understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of it. Nari moved to a table and poured 2 glasses of pale blue liquid. She offered one to Taeyong. "This is Vetheran meditation wine. We drink it when contemplating difficult truths." He accepted the glass. They drank in silence, and the wine tasted like starlight and sadness. "I have experienced something recently," Nari said carefully. "Something my people would call emotional degradation. Thoughts and feelings that distract from duty. I have been trained to suppress such things, but they persist." "What if those feelings are not degradation?" Taeyong suggested. "What if they are growth? A part of yourself trying to emerge after being buried for too long?" She looked at him with those deep purple eyes. "You are a dangerous man, Captain Kim. You make me question everything I have been taught." "Good questions lead to good answers," he replied. They talked for hours about their cultures, their responsibilities, their fears. Slowly, carefully, they began to understand each other, not as human and alien, not as inferior and superior, but as 2 people trying to do their best in an impossibly complex galaxy. When Taeyong finally left, Nari made him a proposal. "I will spend time with your delegation to learn more about human culture, purely for diplomatic purposes, you understand?" "Of course," Taeyong agreed, hiding his smile. "Purely diplomatic." As he walked back to his quarters, Minho caught up with him. The young Vetheran looked nervous, but determined. "Captain Kim," Minho said quietly, "whatever you are doing, please continue. I have served the ambassador for 5 years. This is the first time I have seen her smile." Before Taeyang could respond, Minho bowed and hurried away. Taeyang continued walking, thinking about impossible connections and the courage it took to challenge old ways. Behind him, in her private quarters, Nari stood by the window and allowed herself to smile again. The human quarters smelled like home. Nari noticed this immediately when she entered. Not the sterile, controlled atmosphere of Vetheran spaces, but something warmer. Spices and flowers, and the faint scent of brewing tea. Dr. Hyun greeted her with a genuine smile. "Welcome, Ambassador. We are honored by your visit." Nari nodded formally, but something in the warmth of the greeting made her uncomfortable. She was used to respect based on fear or protocol, not actual pleasure at her presence. The human living space was cluttered compared to Vetheran standards. Personal items were scattered around, photographs, books, and musical instrument. Things that spoke of individual lives rather than collective duty. "Please sit," Taeyong invited, gesturing to a comfortable chair. "We thought you might enjoy experiencing a traditional human meal." "I do not require sustenance at this time," Nari began, then paused. That was her training speaking her official voice. She tried again. "But I would like to experience your customs." Han brought out dishes one by one, explaining each in detail. Rice cooked with careful attention. Vegetables seasoned with flavors Nari had never encountered. Soup that steamed with rich broth. Everything was arranged beautifully, but simply. In Korean culture, Han explained, sharing food is sacred. When we cook for someone, we put care into every action. When we eat together, we share not just food but time and conversation and connection. Among Vetherians, such tasks are performed by designated workers. Nari said, "Those of higher rank do not prepare their own food." "Then they miss the point," Jiwon said, joining them at the table. "The act of cooking for someone shows that you value them enough to spend your time and effort making them happy." Nari considered this as she tasted the food. The flavors were complex, layered, surprising. Each dish told a story of choices made and care taken. It was unlike anything served by the automated systems in Votherarian facilities. "This is excellent," she said, and meant it. After the meal, Taeyang showed her more of human culture. Music first. He played recordings of human songs from different eras and regions. Some were joyful and energetic. Others were slow and sad. All of them expressed emotions openly without restraint. "Why do humans sing about pain?" Nari asked, listening to a particularly melancholy melody. "Why celebrate sadness?" Because pain is part of life, Taeyang explained. When we express it through art, we transform it, we share it. We remind ourselves and others that they are not alone in their suffering. Vothrans are taught to transcend suffering through mental discipline, Nari said slowly. But sometimes, I wonder if we simply push it deeper inside. Push down is not the same as gone, Hyan said gently. It just means you carry it alone. The words struck something in Nari. She had been carrying so much for so long. The weight of her position, the expectations of her empire, the constant need to be perfect, controlled, superior. She had believed this was strength. But listening to human music about shared pain and joy, she wondered if true strength might be something different. Later, as they sat in comfortable silence, Nari asked the question that had been bothering her. Why are you doing this? Sharing your culture with me so openly? I represent an empire that has dismissed your species as inferior. Taeyang looked at her steadily. Because I believe people are not their governments. You are not your empire. You are Nari. And I want to know who Nari is, beyond the ambassador. The use of her name, just her name without title, did something strange to her. For a moment she could not speak. When was the last time someone had addressed her as simply herself? I do not know if I remember who that is, she admitted quietly. Then maybe it is time to find out, he replied. Over the following days, Nari visited the human quarters regularly. She learned about their history, their wars and peace treaties, their art and science, their slow, painful progress toward understanding that different did not mean lesser. Taeyang told her stories of Earth, how humans had once enslaved each other based on appearance, how they had fought terrible wars over resources and beliefs, how they had nearly destroyed their own planet through greed and ignorance. We are not perfect, he said. We have made terrible mistakes, but we learned from them. We learned that strength comes not from dominating others, but from lifting each other up, from recognizing the value in every voice, every perspective. Your empire has never made such mistakes, Nari said. We have been unified under one hierarchy for thousands of years. We eliminated internal conflict through order and discipline. But at what cost? Taeyang asked gently. You eliminated conflict, but did you also eliminate growth, change, the possibility of becoming something better? Nari had no answer, but the question stayed with her, persistent and troubling. One evening, she confessed something she had never told anyone. I have been experiencing emotional responses that my training should have eliminated. Fear, loneliness, and when I am with you, something else. Something my people would call weakness, but feels like the opposite. What does it feel like? Taeyang asked. Like waking up after a very long sleep, she said. Like remembering how to breathe deeply, instead of taking shallow, controlled breaths. Like being alive instead of just existing. He smiled. That is not weakness, Nari. That is courage. She met his eyes, and in that moment, something fundamental shifted between them. They had started as diplomat and ambassador, human and Valoran, inferior and superior. But now they were simply two people who saw each other clearly and chose to trust what they saw. Thank you, she said softly, for showing me this, for seeing me. Thank you for letting yourself be seen, he replied. Outside the human quarters, the galaxy continued its political games. But inside, something new was growing. A bridge between worlds built on understanding and respect, and neither of them knew yet how important that bridge would become. The message appeared on every screen in the station at the same time. Someone had leaked surveillance footage of the human quarters. The recording showed Taeyang and Nari together talking and sharing meals, but the footage had been edited to look suspicious, to suggest improper conduct. Taeyang watched the leaked video in his quarters, jaw tight with anger. They are trying to create a scandal to discredit both of us. But why? Jujuan demanded. What do they gain from this? Yan was already working at her console, fingers flying across the holographic interface. I am tracing the data trail. Whoever did this was sloppy. They wanted speed over subtlety. Across the station, Nari faced her own crisis. Conservative members of the veteran delegation demanded she cut all contact with the humans. Some even suggested she return home in disgrace. You have embarrassed the Empire, one elder said coldly, fraternizing with lesser beings, showing emotion. This is unacceptable. Nari stood before them, her expression calm despite the anger burning inside. I have done nothing wrong. I have learned about another culture. That is my duty as a diplomat. Your duty is to maintain our superiority. Another voice snapped. Not to lower yourself to their level. Before Nari could respond, Minho burst into the room. His usual composure was gone, replaced by urgency. Ambassador, I found something. The surveillance was planted by the Koran Confederacy. They are behind this. The room went silent. The Korans were a powerful military alliance known for their aggression and political manipulation. At the same moment, Hun made the same discovery. It is the Korans. They have been orchestrating incidents across the station, creating conflicts between different species delegations. They want chaos. But why target us specifically? Taeyang asked. Because you are dangerous to them, John said slowly, understanding dawning. A human-Vatheran alliance would shift the power balance in the galaxy. The Korans maintain influence by keeping everyone divided. If we unite, others might follow. Taeyang contacted Nari immediately. They met in a neutral conference room with both their teams present. The evidence was clear. The Korans had not only planted surveillance, but had manipulated multiple species over months, creating artificial conflicts to maintain their own position. We must present this to the Council, Nari said. Expose their conspiracy. They will deny everything, Minho warned. The Korans are experts at covering their tracks. Then we make our case undeniable, Taeyang replied. We gather every piece of evidence. We show the pattern. We force the Council to see the truth. They worked through the night. Humans and Vatherans side by side, sharing information and strategies. The barriers between them dissolved in the face of common purpose. Even the conservative Vatheran elders had to acknowledge the value of the cooperation. Just before dawn, disaster struck. Alarms blared through the station. Someone had sabotaged the life support system in the human quarters. Taeyang and Nari were both there reviewing final evidence. The doors sealed automatically. Oxygen levels began dropping through the emergency communication system. A Koran voice spoke. This is what happens to those who interfere with the natural order. Your deaths will appear as tragic accidents. Taeyang moved immediately to the manual override panel, but it had been fused shut. Jishuan and the security team were outside, trying to force the doors open. Minutes passed. The air grew thin. Nari closed her eyes, centering herself. Her psychic abilities had been carefully controlled her entire life, used only in approved ways. But now facing death, she released that control. Power flowed through her raw and overwhelming. She reached out with her mind, finding the security systems, the locked doors, the sabotaged controls. It should have been impossible. Novel Theon had the strength to affect machines directly, but Nari was not thinking about what should be impossible. She was thinking about Taeyang, about her team, about all the people depending on them. The doors exploded outward. Fresh air rushed in. Taeyang gasped, falling to his knees. Nari collapsed beside him, her energy completely spent. Security teams rushed in, followed by medical personnel. Later, in the medical bay, Taeyang sat beside Nari's bed. She was unconscious but stable. Hun checked her vital signs and shook her head in amazement. What she did should have been impossible. The amount of psychic force required to override those systems remotely. She saved your lives. She saved all of us, Taeyang said quietly, taking Nar's hand. The evidence was in that room. Without it, we had nothing. When Nari finally woke, the first thing she saw was Taeyang. He smiled with relief. Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare. Did we get the evidence? She asked, her voice weak. We did, thanks to you. The council has called an emergency session. The Korans are finished. But when they presented their case to the council the next day, the Koran representative had one final card to play. Standing before the assembled aliens, he invoked an ancient law. We challenge these accusations. We demand trial by combat. Let the truth be proven through strength as our ancestors intended. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Trial by combat was old, rarely used, but legally binding. If the Korans won, their crimes would be forgiven. If they lost, they would face full punishment. Taeyang stood. We accept. I will be humanity's champion. Before anyone could object, Nari rose as well, still weak but determined. And I will fight beside him. This accusation was made jointly. The defense will be joint as well. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. A Vatheran ambassador fighting alongside a human. It was unprecedented. It was shocking. It was exactly what the galaxy needed to see. The Koran representative smiled coldly. So be it. Tomorrow in the arena of truth, we will see whose strength prevails. As they left the council chamber, Jiwan caught up with them. Sir, you just volunteered for a fight against one of the galaxy's greatest warriors. Are you sure about this? Taeyang looked at Nari. She looked back at him. No words were needed. They had already proven that together, they were stronger than apart. Yes, they said in unison. We are sure the arena of truth was ancient, built by the first civilizations to join the Galactic Council. It existed partly in normal space and partly in another dimension, responding to the thoughts and abilities of those who entered. The arena tested not just physical strength, but strategy, willpower, and the ability to adapt. Thousands of beings filled the observation galleries. Some came to witness justice. Others came hoping to see the upstart humans humbled. A few came because they sensed that this combat would change everything. In the preparation chamber, Taeyang checked his equipment. Light armor designed for mobility rather than heavy protection. A plasma blade that hummed with contained energy. His military training had prepared him for combat, but never against an alien warrior in a reality-bending arena. Nari stood beside him, similarly equipped. She looked stronger now, fully recovered from her psychic exertion, but her eyes held worry. Taeyang, the Koran champion, is named Varak. He has fought in this arena 50 times and never lost. He is brutal and experienced. Then we need to be smarter, he replied. Can you sense what he is thinking? She closed her eyes, reaching out with her psychic abilities. After a moment, she shook her head. He has mental shields, very strong ones. I cannot read his thoughts directly, but you can read me, Taeyang said. That is our advantage. We can coordinate instantly without words. Varak fights alone. We fight together. Understanding dawned in her eyes. A psychic link during combat. It is risky. If I am distracted, we both become vulnerable. I trust you, he said simply. Do you trust me? She met his gaze. In it, she saw complete confidence. Not in victory, but in their partnership. She reached out and took his hand. With my life, the arena doors opened. Light flooded in, and the roar of the crowd washed over them. They stepped forward together, entering a space that shimmered with possibility. Varak was already waiting. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick scales that looked like living armor. His forearms each held a different weapon. His eyes glowed with predatory intelligence. 2 against 1, he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. And still you will lose. The arena master's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Combat begins. May truth prevail. The floor beneath them shifted. Suddenly they stood on a floating platform above a bottomless chasm. Other platforms appeared and disappeared randomly. The arena was testing their ability to adapt to changing conditions. Bar Eric charged immediately, moving with surprising speed for his size. Taeyang and Nari split apart, forcing him to choose a target. He chose Taeyang, swinging 2 massive blades. But Nari was already in motion. Through their psychic link, she had known what Taeyang would do before he did it. While Varak focused forward, she attacked from behind, her blades striking at the joints in his armor. Varak roared and spun faster than should be possible. One of his weapons caught Nari across the shoulder, sending her flying. She hit a platform hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Through their link, Taeyang felt her pain as his own, but he also felt her determination. She was already getting up, already planning the next move. He pressed his attack, keeping Varak off balance while she recovered. The arena shifted again. Now they stood in a maze of mirrors, each surface reflecting and distorting reality. Varak left. Hiding will not save you. But they were not hiding. Nari extended her psychic senses, feeling the true positions despite the visual confusion. She guided Taeyang through the maze with thoughts rather than words. They moved like a single organism, always knowing where the other was. Varak crashed through mirrors, destroying them rather than navigating around them. His brute force approach had worked in previous battles, but against 2 opponents who could coordinate perfectly, his predictability became a weakness. They struck from different angles simultaneously. Taeyang aimed low while Nari attacked high. Varak blocked both attacks, but had to give ground. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The arena sensed the shift in momentum. The mirrors vanished. Now they stood in a storm of energy bolts that shot randomly from the walls. Each bolt could incapacitate on contact. This was where their partnership truly shone. Nari could sense the energy patterns a split second before the bolts fired. She fed that information to Taeyong through their link. Together, they moved through the deadly storm like dancers. Never quite where the attack struck. Varric fighting alone took hit after hit. His armor protected him, but the impact slowed him down. Frustration made him reckless. He charged through the storm, accepting the punishment to reach his opponents. Taeyong saw the moment when Varric committed fully to his charge. Through the link, he shared the observation with Nari. Without speaking, they executed a maneuver they had never practiced, but somehow knew perfectly. They did not retreat from Varric's charge. Instead, they moved toward him from opposite sides. At the last instant, they dropped and rolled. Varric, unable to stop his momentum, stumbled between them. Their blades struck simultaneously at the weak points Nari had identified in his armor. Not killing blows, but precise strikes that locked his joints, preventing movement. Varric crashed to the ground, immobilized. The energy storm ceased. The arena floor became solid and stable. Combat was over. The silence in the observation galleries lasted for 3 heartbeats. Then cheers erupted. Not everyone was happy with the outcome, but everyone recognized what they had witnessed. Not just victory through strength, but victory through perfect cooperation. Taeyong and Nari stood side by side, both breathing hard, both injured, but standing. The psychic link between them remained, and through it, they shared relief and triumph in something deeper, something that would not easily be broken. The arena master spoke again. Victory is declared. The accusations stand proven. The Koran conspiracy will face full judgment. As they left the arena, Varric called out from where he lay. His voice was no longer mocking, but thoughtful. You fought well, but know this. The Korans planned this conspiracy for a reason. Something is coming. Something worse than political games. Before they could question him further, Koran officials rushed in and silenced him. But his warning echoed in their minds. They had won the battle, but something told them the war was just beginning. In the medical bay afterward, as they treated their injuries, Nari finally broke the psychic link. The absence of it felt strange, like losing a sense they had always had. That was remarkable, she said quietly. I have never felt so connected to another being. Neither have I, Taeyong admitted. It was like we were one person with 2 bodies. They sat in comfortable silence, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. 3 days after their victory, the truth about Varric's warning became clear. Intelligence reports flooded in from the outer reaches of the galaxy. Something was moving towards civilized space. Something old and hungry. Jan presented her findings to the emergency council session. Her face was pale with worry. They call themselves the Void. Ancient records mention them, but most species thought they were myths. They are not. They consume entire civilizations to fuel their expansion. Holographic images showed dark ships moving through space like a swarm of locusts. Planets in their path went silent, their populations simply disappearing. The scale of the threat was impossible to comprehend. The Korans knew. A council member said, that is why they tried to centralize military power. They were preparing for this war by creating division and conflict, Taeyong said, standing to address the council. They chose manipulation over honesty. They tried to prepare through control rather than cooperation, and that is exactly why they would have failed. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Taeyong continued, his voice carrying clearly. The Voidborn are a hive mind. They act as one. The Korans tried to defeat them by making us act as one too, forced into hierarchy and obedience. But that just creates a smaller hive mind. It does not give us an advantage. Nari rose beside him. When she spoke, her voice held the authority of her position, but also the passion of someone who had learned to feel. What Captain Kim says is true. I have studied the old records. Every civilization that faced the void alone was destroyed. Every alliance built on domination eventually collapsed. We need something different. What do you propose? The council leader asked. Taeyong and Nari exchanged a glance. They had discussed this possibility for hours, knowing how radical it would sound. Nari spoke first. A new kind of alliance, not based on hierarchy or age or power. Based on equal partnership, every species contributing their unique strengths, coordinating but not conforming. Chaos, someone objected. Without clear command structure, we will fail. Diversity, Taeyong corrected. The Voidborn hive mind cannot predict individual choice within collective action. They expect either complete unity or complete disorder. We give them neither. We give them coordinated diversity, strength through difference, not despite it. The debate raged for hours. Conservative voices resisted change. Progressive voices supported the idea, but doubted it could work. The galaxy had operated on hierarchies for millions of years. Could they really abandon that structure in the face of existential threat? Finally, the Vertheran senior delegate stood. This was an ancient being, one who had served the Empire for centuries. Everyone expected her to reject the proposal. Instead, she looked at Nari with something like pride. I have watched Ambassador Nari change since meeting the humans. I confess, I feared she had lost herself. But I see now that she found herself. She rediscovered emotions we thought were weaknesses, and through those emotions, she became stronger, not weaker. The elder turned to address the full council. I have lived long enough to see many approaches to galactic cooperation. None have truly worked. Perhaps it is time to try what the humans suggest. Perhaps it is time to admit that our old ways, though successful for a time, have reached their limit. The vote was close, but it passed. The Galactic Defense Coalition would be formed based on principles of equal partnership and voluntary cooperation. Every species would contribute according to their strengths, with no single authority commanding all. The real work began immediately. Military officers from dozens of species had to learn to work together. Scientists had to share knowledge they had guarded as secrets. Diplomats had to unlearn centuries of thinking in terms of superior and inferior. Jiwan found herself leading integration efforts, working with officers who had viewed humans as children playing at war. She won their respect not by proving human superiority, but by listening to their experience and finding ways to blend different tactical approaches. Hoon made a crucial breakthrough studying the ancient records. The void had a weakness. They could be disrupted by certain energy patterns, but only if those patterns were generated from multiple sources simultaneously. One species alone could never produce the necessary complexity. Only cooperation made victory possible. Minho became an unexpected bridge between species. His experience watching Taiyang and Nari had changed him. He helped other Vetharian understand that accepting help was not weakness but wisdom, that acknowledging limits was the first step to overcoming them. As the coalition fleet assembled, something unprecedented happened. Species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries began to form friendships. Shared purpose dissolved old prejudices. Working together revealed that everyone had fears, hopes, and the desire to protect their homes. Taeyang and Nari were offered joint command of the coalition forces. They accepted, knowing the symbolic importance. A human and a Varian leading as equals. It sent a message to every species that the old hierarchies were truly finished. In a private ceremony, they formalized their bond in both human and traditions. For humans, an exchange of vows and rings. For Vetherians, a psychic linking that was meant to be permanent. Both traditions spoke of partnership, commitment, and facing the future together. Standing before their friends and allies, Taiyang spoke. We come from different worlds. We have different histories, but we share the same hope. That we can build something better than what came before. That we can face the darkness together and emerge into light. Nari added, her voice strong and clear. I was taught that emotion was weakness, that connection was dependency, that superiority meant standing alone at the top. Taiyang showed me that all of this was wrong. The strongest thing I ever did was admit I needed someone. The bravest choice I ever made was allowing myself to be vulnerable. Their bond became legendary throughout the coalition. People told the story of the human captain who dared to choose equality over hierarchy, and the Vetheran ambassador who had the courage to accept. That story inspired others to bridge their own divides. Finally, the coalition fleet was ready. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all operating under a shared framework, but maintaining their unique approaches. It looked chaotic compared to traditional military formations. But within that seeming chaos was a flexibility that no rigid hierarchy could match. On the bridge of the flagship, Taeyang and Nari stood side by side, watching the assembled fleet. Through their psychic bond, they shared thoughts and feelings without words. Determination, fear, hope, love. The void will reach the outer colonies in 3 days, Jiwan reported. All coalition forces are in position. Taeyang took a deep breath. Then let us show them what cooperation truly means. Let us prove that diversity is not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to embrace. Nari raised her hand, and her voice carried to every ship in the fleet through the communication system. For our homes, for our future, for each other, we stand together, and the fleet moved forward as one. Not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. That choice would make all the difference. The Voidorn arrived like a storm of darkness. Their ships were organic things grown rather than built, and they moved with terrible purpose. The first engagement was brutal. Coalition forces learned quickly that traditional tactics meant nothing against an enemy that thought as one. But the Coalition had something the Void did not expect. They had chaos in the best possible way. When one species fell back, another advanced. When one strategy failed, another was already being implemented. The Void-born hivemind could not predict individual creativity multiplied across dozens of different perspectives. On the flagship bridge, Taiyang coordinated with fleet commanders through direct communication channels. No rigid chain of command slowed them down. Every captain had the authority to make decisions based on their unique knowledge and abilities. They are trying to isolate our forces, Jiwan reported, cutting ships off from the main fleet. Let them, Taiyang replied. Pass the word. Isolated ships should engage guerrilla tactics. Hit and run. Make them chase you. Draw them away from their formation. The order spread through the fleet. Ships that had been trained to maintain formation instead broke into smaller groups. They harassed the Voidorn from unexpected angles, never staying in one place long enough to be destroyed. It looked like disorder, but it was coordinated flexibility. Nari stood at the tactical display. Her psychic abilities extended across the battlefield. She could sense the Void hive mind, vast and cold and utterly alien. It was trying to understand the Coalition tactics, but each time it adapted to one approach, another ship would do something completely different. They are confused, she said with grim satisfaction. They expect unified response to unified threat. They cannot comprehend organized diversity. Huan worked frantically in the science bay. The energy weapon she had designed required precise coordination from 7 different species technologies. Each contributed a different frequency, and together, they created a pattern that disrupted the Voidorn organic systems. It is ready, she announced, but someone needs to deliver it to the center of their formation. The weapon only works at close range. Silence fell on the bridge. Everyone knew what that meant. A suicide mission. Flying directly into the heart of the Voidborn fleet, with no guarantee of survival. Taiyang made his decision immediately. I will take it. No, Nari said firmly. We go together. That is what we agreed. All challenges together. Nari, someone needs to coordinate the fleet. You can do that with your psychic abilities better than anyone. And you can adapt to changing tactics better than anyone, she countered. We need both skills for this to work. Stop trying to protect me. We are equals, remember? He looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. After everything they had been through, he should have known she would not let him face this alone. He smiled despite the fear. Together. Then they took a fast ship, armed with the energy weapon, and protected by volunteers from a dozen species. The journey through the battlefield was terrifying. Voidborn vessels attacked from all sides. Their escorts fell one by one, sacrificing themselves to keep the mission alive. Nari sat beside Taiyang in the cockpit, their psychic link fully open. She could feel his fear and his courage. He could feel her determination and her love. They were not two people anymore, but something new, something stronger than the sum of their parts. As they penetrated deeper into the Voidorn formation, Nari extended her psychic senses toward the hive mind. She had an idea. A desperate, probably insane idea. Taiyang, the bond we share. It is unlike anything in Vitheran or human experience. What if we could use it as a weapon? How? He asked, dodging another attack. The Voidborn hive mind operates on total unity. Every thought identical, every action coordinated. Our bond is different. Two distinct minds choosing to work together while remaining individual. If I could inject that concept into their collective consciousness, it might create a feedback loop. It could destroy you, Taiyang said. Your mind touching theirs directly. Not if you anchor me. Not if our bond is strong enough to pull me back. They reached the center of the formation. Voidorn ships surrounded them completely. Nari closed her eyes and reached out with all her psychic strength. She found the hive mind and pushed their bond into it. The concept of two beings utterly different. Choosing unity while maintaining individuality. The void-born consciousness recoiled. It could not process the idea. Unity without uniformity, cooperation without domination. The contradiction spread through the hive mind like a virus, creating confusion and hesitation. Taeyang activated the energy weapon. The 7 frequencies combined, amplified by the disruption Nari had created. The effect rippled outward, shutting down Voidorn systems across the entire fleet. But Nari was lost in the hive mind, drowning in alien thoughts. Taeyang felt her slipping away through their bond. He grabbed her hand physically, while reaching for her mentally, pulling with all his strength. "Come back to me," he said, his voice desperate. "You're not alone. You are Nari. You are my partner. You are loved. Come back." His words carried through their bond, reached her in the darkness. She grasped onto them like a lifeline. Slowly, painfully, she pulled herself free of the Voidorn consciousness and back to herself. She opened her eyes to find Taeyang holding her, tears on his face. Around them, the Voidborn fleet was in chaos. Without their hive mind's unified direction, the ships drifted aimlessly. Coalition forces pressed their advantage, driving the enemy back. The battle turned. Within hours, the Voidorn retreated into deep space, their fleet broken, and their hive mind too damaged to coordinate an effective defense. The victory belonged to the coalition, to cooperation and diversity, and the courage to try something new. Celebrations erupted across the fleet and throughout the galaxy. Species that had barely tolerated each other, now embraced as allies. The old hierarchies had not just been challenged, but replaced with something better. Months later, after the wounds had healed and the fleet had returned home, the Galactic Council met to formalize the changes. The old structure was dissolved. A new system emerged, one where every species had equal voice, and decisions were made through consensus rather than hierarchy. Taeyang and Nari were offered positions as co-leaders of the reformed council. They politely declined. Instead, they founded an academy dedicated to teaching young beings from all species the principles that had saved the galaxy. How to cooperate while remaining individuals. How to find strength in diversity. How to build bridges instead of walls. On the academy's opening day, a new human diplomat arrived at Nexus Prime. Captain Sora Choi walked into the same grand hall where Taeyang had once stood. An elder representative from an ancient species approached her with a traditional gesture of subordination. Sora politely declined the gesture. Instead, she offered her hand as an equal. The elder being paused, considering. Then a smile crossed their alien features. They took her hand warmly. "How very human," the elder said with approval. "And how very right." In the academy above, Taeyang and Nari stood at an observation window. They watched the new generation of diplomats meeting, building friendships, learning to value each other. Hand in hand, they shared a moment of quiet satisfaction. What had begun as one human's refusal to accept inequality had transformed the galaxy forever. Not through force or superiority, but through the simple revolutionary act of treating others as equals, of choosing connection over hierarchy, of proving that strength comes not from standing above others, but from standing beside them. The galaxy had learned what humans had always known. That diversity is not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to celebrate. That cooperation chosen freely is stronger than obedience forced by fear. That love and respect and genuine partnership can change everything. And that sometimes the most human thing you can do is see past the surface to the person beneath and dare to say the truth. I want you not as a subordinate, not as a prize, but as an equal, as a partner, as yourself. Those 5 words had changed 2 lives and saved countless others, and they would echo through galactic history as proof that the smallest acts of courage can have the greatest consequences.